Claude Fable 5 is here, and this is not just another normal Claude update, because Anthropic is basically saying, here is our most powerful public model so far, but we are still not giving everyone the full version.
What? We're flying to Philadelphia! Oh, hell no! Hell no!
And honestly, that is the part that makes this release interesting. Not just the benchmark chart, not just the new model name, but the fact that Anthropic has now created a clear line between the model regular users get and the model they only trust with selected partners. So today, I want to break this down in a simple way: what Claude Fable 5 actually is, how it compares with Opus 4.8 and rivals like GPT 5.5, what the Mythos controversy is, where this model might actually be useful in real life, and at the end, I will give you my honest opinion on whether the hype is legit or whether this is just another AI launch that looks bigger than it actually is. First, what is Claude Fable 5? The simple answer is that Fable 5 is Anthropic's first broadly available Mythos-class model, which basically means it belongs to a higher model family than Opus, Sonnet, and Haiku. But the more important answer is that Fable 5 is the public safe version of Mythos, while Claude Mythos 5 is the more restricted version that selected cyber defenders, infrastructure partners, and approved users can access through Project Glasswing. The easiest way to understand it is this. Mythos is the full engine. Fable is the same engine with safety systems watching certain roads, so you still get a very powerful model, but if the request goes into sensitive areas like cybersecurity, biology, chemistry, or model distillation, the response can be routed away from Fable and handled by Claude Opus 4.8 instead. And this is where the launch becomes controversial, because some people are looking at Fable 5 and saying, wait, is this actually Mythos? Or is this just nerfed Mythos for normal users? And honestly, I understand why people are asking that, because Anthropic itself is saying Mythos 5 shares the same underlying capabilities as Fable 5, but with safeguards lifted in some areas. So technically, yes, normal users are not getting the fully unlocked version. But I also do not think this is just fake hype, because if a model is genuinely strong enough in cybersecurity and scientific research that the company is worried about misuse, then releasing a public version with guardrails is not surprising. It is probably the only way they could release it widely right now. So the real question is not whether Fable is fully unlocked. The real question is whether the locked version is still useful enough for normal users, developers, creators, and businesses. Now let's talk numbers, because this is where people usually decide whether a new model is actually interesting or just marketing. Anthropic says Fable 5 is state-of-the-art on nearly all tested benchmarks, and that the longer and more complex the task gets, the bigger its lead becomes, which is a very important claim because this model is not really being sold as a simple chatbot. It is being sold as a long-horizon work model. In the launch discussion, the coding numbers that stand out are agentic coding, around 80%, compared with around 69% for Opus 4.8, and another coding score around 29.3, compared with 13.4 for Opus 4.8. So if those numbers hold up in real work, this is not a tiny upgrade. This is a meaningful jump for developers using AI agents, code-based migration, debugging, and long multi-step coding tasks. Anthropic also says Fable 5 and Mythos 5 support a 1 million token context window by default, and up to 128,000 output tokens per request, which is huge for people working with long documents, large code bases, research files, legal documents, financial reports, or multi-step projects where smaller models usually start forgetting things halfway through. But here is the catch. Fable 5 is expensive. The pricing is $10 per million input tokens and $50 per million output tokens, which is double the price of Claude Opus 4.8. So even if Fable is stronger, that does not automatically mean you should use it for everything. Because if you are writing captions, summarizing small articles, rewriting emails, or doing simple brainstorming, you are probably wasting money. This is why I think the real comparison is not just Fable 5 versus GPT 5.5 on a chart. The real comparison is Fable 5 versus GPT 5.5, Opus 4.8, and Gemini, on actual messy work. Because if another model gives 85 or 90% of the quality for much cheaper, then Fable might only make sense for the tasks where failure is expensive, like big coding projects, high-value research, serious business analysis, or agent workflows that need to keep going for a long time without losing the thread. And the real-world examples Anthropic gave are definitely strong. Stripe reportedly used Fable 5 on a 50 million-line Ruby codebase, and the model completed a codebase-wide migration in one day that would have taken a whole team more than 2 months by hand. And that is the kind of example that makes this release feel more serious than just another benchmark slide. They also talk about Fable 5 being better at long context memory and long-running tasks, including examples where persistent file-based memory helped it improve much more than Opus 4.8. And they even showed vision-heavy demos, like beating Pokemon Fire Red with a minimal vision-only harness. Which sounds funny at first, but the actual point is that the model can use visual information, memory, planning, and persistence better than older Claude models. Now, personally, I do not care much that it can play a game. I care about what that means for real work. Because if the same ability helps it understand screenshots, rebuild app interfaces, inspect dashboards, read charts, follow a UI workflow, or keep track of a software project across many steps, then it becomes useful for builders, agencies, developers, researchers, and anyone doing serious AI-assisted work. But the controversy is real, and Reddit is already full of people asking fair questions. Some users are skeptical because Fable and Mythos benchmarks are being discussed together. Some are saying they want a benchmark list for Fable alone. Some are worried that the safeguards may be overly sensitive, and some are saying the pricing and rate limits matter more than the headline numbers, which I think is exactly the right way to think about it. Because yes, Fable 5 sounds powerful, but if the model falls back at the wrong time, or if you are in a domain where safeguards trigger too often, or if the cost becomes too high for daily use, then the experience may feel very different from the launch blog. And this is why I do not want to sit here and say, everyone should immediately switch to Fable 5 for everything. My honest opinion is this: the hype is partly legit, but it is not magic. Fable 5 looks like a real step forward for long-horizon agentic work, coding, big document analysis, vision-heavy tasks, and projects where cheaper models usually get lost. But for casual users, it is probably overkill, and for people expecting the fully unlocked Mythos experience, it may feel limited. So who should actually use it if you are a developer working on a large code base? A startup founder, building with AI agents. A researcher working with long documents. A finance or legal professional analyzing complex files. Or someone who wants AI to stay focused across a serious multi-step task. Then Fable 5 is absolutely worth testing. But if you are just asking simple questions, writing short content, generating basic ideas, or using AI casually, then I would not rush. Because Opus 4.8, GPT 5.5, Gemini, or even cheaper models may be more than enough for your daily work. And spending more just because the model is new is not smart. And this is the bigger story for me. AI is moving away from simple chatbots and toward long-running workers because companies are no longer only asking, can the model answer a question? They are asking, can the model hold context, use tools, work for hours, fix its own mistakes, read files, analyze images, and push a project forward with less supervision? That is why Fable 5 matters. Not because it has a fancy name, and not because Anthropic says state-of-the-art, but because it shows where frontier AI is going. More capability, more autonomy, more access control, more safety systems, and probably more separation between what normal users get and what trusted partners get. So is Claude Fable 5 legit? I would say yes, it looks legit for serious work, especially coding and long context tasks. But the hype needs to be controlled, because the public version is still guardrailed, the pricing is high, 30-day retention applies to Mythos-class traffic, and real-world comparison against GPT 5.5, Opus 4.8, and Gemini is still what will decide whether this model is actually worth using every day. And guys, before I end this, I genuinely want your opinion. Do you want a full comparison video where I test Claude Fable 5 against GPT 5.5, Opus 4.8, Gemini, or any other model you want? Not just with benchmark screenshots, but with real tasks like coding, writing, research, reasoning, document analysis, and maybe even an agent workflow. Comment down below which comparison you want to see first. Claude Fable 5 versus GPT 5.5. Fable 5 versus Opus 4.8. Fable 5 versus Gemini, or any other model. And if this video gets a good response, then I will bring that comparison video fast. So that is Claude Fable 5. Powerful, expensive, guardrailed, controversial, but definitely not boring. And if you want simple, practical, hype-free breakdowns of the biggest AI and tech updates, subscribe to Geek Guru Guide, because I will keep breaking down what actually matters, what is just marketing, and which tools are worth your time. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.